Welcome, everybody. We're going to give it maybe another minute. Yes, please do. We'd love to see her again. We're going to give everybody about another minute to see if we've got some more folks that are maybe running a second late. And then we'll go ahead and get started. If you haven't already and you want to put your name and your school and your job title in the chat just so we can get to know everybody a little bit better, you can go ahead and do that. And there's also a link to the presentation in the chat so you guys can have a copy of that. And please don't be shy. We would love for y'all to interact with us. This is not going to be a super formal presentation. We've got some stuff to talk to you about, but we'd love for it to be kind of a give and take, and y'all feel free to jump in at any point.
I see you, Michael Owen.
Where is she?
Hey.
I gotta get rid of the chat.
Hey, Tiara. Hey, Rachel.
Hey! We miss you.
I miss you guys too.
It's so good to see you.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Where's Curly? Is he in here too?
No.
No, he's downstairs in the dungeon.
What about Moken? Where's she?
She actually went to another school this year.
Oh, really?
She did, yep. Yeah, she's in Ashe County now.
Oh, okay. She was
Yep, she sure is. Yep.
All right, ladies, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Oh, I'm so glad we got to see her.
That was awesome.
Yay. All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's see if I can figure out how to drive this thing. We'll try it and see. If you have not already downloaded the Performance Matters app, please make sure that you do that. That's how you get credit for attending all the sessions and that sort of thing. So make sure that you do that. Now, hopefully we've got some Hamilton fans out there. Let's rate your mood today in Lin-Manuel's. I can't decide. I'm either an 8 or a 3. One of the two. I'm not exactly sure which one at this point. By the end of the day, I'll be a 1. Totally. There you go. Lindsay, I love the reference. Very good. We've got so many there. Yeah, Aaron, I'm right there with you. And I don't think that is in relation to the conference. I think that may have been in relation to like the release of the updated toolkit yesterday and like school in 3 weeks and that sort of thing. It's going to be fun. It's going to be okay. I'm going to have t-shirts made. That's my mantra. I say that all the time, especially when it's testing season. It's going to be fun. It's going to be okay. So it's all good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on. This session is all about PLCs, and as an administrator, as a leader within the building, how do you facilitate PLCs? How do you make sure that they are effective in your school? My name is Rachel Sheppard, and I am an assistant principal at Watauga High School in Boone. I started out as a history and English and EC teacher, so I've done all kinds of things. And then I was an ITF before I moved into administration here at Watauga.
Hey, everybody. My name is Tiara Stark, and I'm one of the assistant principals here at Watauga High School in Boone, North Carolina. I started out as a family and consumer sciences teacher here at Watauga, and then I moved into instructional management for CTE, and now I am the CTE director for the county, as well as an AP at the high school, and I've been serving with Rachel for 5 years.
Partners in crime right here.
That's right.
Okay, so the way that we've got this session organized, we're going to start off with trying to give you guys some of the basic understandings of the PLC process and implementing a PLC initiative in your school. We're going to go over some digital tools that we use to try to implement that PLC process within our school, and then some things that we use to try to evaluate that PLC work and make sure that it's as effective and efficient as it possibly can be. We definitely want this to be interactive. So if you have a question, if you have some input to give into the whole process, please feel free. You can type it in the chat. You can turn on your mic, whatever you feel like doing. But we would love to interact with y'all as we go through this whole process.
All right. So first, something that we found really important throughout all of our, and let me just start off by saying we've been through PLC iterations for at least 8 years here at Watauga High School. We've tried it in different ways. We've tried it only where the teachers participate in it. We tried it where the students have something to do, they don't have something to do, and we've come a long way. And I think the only good way to really embed PLC in your school is to grow together and have it come from the teachers from the ground up. But we as administrators, we have to be a model for the PLC process that we hope to see from our teachers. So in every step that you'll see in this presentation, we hope that you can take away something for you to do, something for you to model. That way you can support the process and the work of the teachers, because a true PLC is the teachers working. It's not us. We're just helping to support. So think about it as a mirror image. If we're going to promote something for the teachers to do, if we're going to ask them to do a task, we should probably do it first ourselves as an admin team, as a PLT leadership team, trying out different protocols, go unpacking part of a curriculum so that we can see what the process is. So just think about that. If you're going to propose something, make sure that we do it ourselves first.
I think it's much more difficult to get teachers to really truly engage with the process if you're not neck deep in it too. So that's sort of where we live most of the time.
So this is a quote from Facilitating Teacher Teams and Authentic PLCs, and I should have left it out on my desk, so hang on one second.
There is a list of resources at the end of this presentation, and this is one of them. If you are going to implement a PLC initiative in your school, you need that book.
So it's a great quick read, and this book, it speaks in real language. While it's based on research and some theories, this book is not theoretical at all. He basically says, what are you doing? Get off your butt and do it this way. I mean, he's just very real in the way that he speaks. So this is a great book, and it's really, it's teeny tiny. So this is a quote that we pulled out from the book, and what I want you to think about is teacher interactions and gain in student learning. Like I said before, PLC is all about the teachers getting together and working for the product being student learning.
Okay, so before we really dive into this, we want to make sure that we're all on the same page with what a PLC is, because that term gets thrown around a lot, almost so much that I think for some people, PLC, it doesn't even really mean anything to them anymore, because we call so many different things PLCs. If it's going to be a true PLC, and we use the DeFore model, that's definitely what you're going to hear from us in this presentation. But if it's going to be a true PLC, there are some components that have to be there. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. This is the definition from Learning by Doing. So Learning by Doing, if you're going to implement a PLC process, that is the PLC Bible. That is where you go. It has the answers to everything that you need. So the words that we want you to get out of this quote, and I'm not going to read it to you because we can all read, but the PLC process is ongoing. It never ends. And I think some of our teachers struggled with that at first, because they thought that they were going to like do this thing once and then it's over and it's done. And that's been a difficult adjustment for some of our folks here in the building, because it never ends. It's cyclical. It's always ongoing. It's collaborative. And that when you break that word down into its basic roots, it means to co-labor. It means to work side by side. It's not, a PLC is not just, I'm going to bring my stuff and I'm going to share it with you, and you're going to bring your stuff and share it with me. Although that is great and wonderful for colleagues to do, that's not a PLC. A PLC is where we actually work on that work together, side by side, simultaneously. It's cyclical. Again, it's that ongoing process, but it repeats itself over and over and over again. You're going to see a lot of the things that we use. It's a very circular process. It's not linear at all. And at the end of the day, you want to implement this process because you're going to get better results for the kids that you serve. And it definitely can do that for you. We have seen the results in our building with our folks and our kids and everybody. It's definitely something that is a change agent within the school.
So the research of D4 and Solution Tree, Solution Tree is they have PLC on lockdown. There are 6 elements that we focus all of our work around. So the first and foremost is learning, and that's learning by the students and learning by the teachers. It's a consistent cyclical process, like we said in the quote before. With that, in order to get that learning where we want it to be, we have to collaborate. We have to co-labor. So collaboration, we put a little definition thing on there because, we like pictures sometimes. So we co-labor on all of this work that we're doing to support the learning of students and teachers. And then the next one is inquiry. We have to continue to question our practice. We have to continue to question, are our students learning? If they're not learning, what should we do? A lot of the PLC work is questions. It's not so much, there are checklists involved. There are definitely tasks and checklists, but a lot of that is questioning yourself, questioning the research, questioning where the students are. And so the next part is it's doing, it's action. It's not just the plan that you put on the shelf and later on you go back and look, oh, did they meet this? This is actually work and action that you're taking on a daily basis. It becomes embedded in your everyday work. And then the next part is commitment. You cannot run a true PLC or PLT process without the commitment of everyone involved. That's why the PLC, how you run it in your school, and the way we run it may not be the way that it runs in your school, and that's okay, because the commitment has to come from the teachers and the people on the ground floor who are doing that work. You have to get that buy-in, and it's not getting the buy-in by saying, we're going to do it my way, and this is how I'm going to lay it out for you. That buy-in has to come because they had a piece in the work. They had a hand. They had a say. They had voice, and we'll go over that a little more later. And the last element of these is results. It's all about looking back to that learning, going back to the first one. What are the results from the learning? What are the results from all that work we're doing? We've been collaborating. We've been asking ourselves questions. We've been doing the action. We're committed, but what's coming out of it? So the last piece is that results, to connect it back to the first one, which is learning. And the last thing I'll leave you with on this slide, PLC, PLT, it is not another program. It's not something that we pay for and we run ourselves with it. This is just simply how we operate. It's embedded in our process. It's not something that it's not an extra piece that we do. It's just how we operate. All right, we've got a few important terms for you. These are terms that we use, and we've gotten them from working with the D4 model, Venables, and Solution Tree. So you've probably seen some of these words before. We wanted to make sure that we were all on the same playing field as we go through this presentation. So unpacking is a process where you do an in-depth review of curriculum and content from the state. So each teacher goes through, as a PLC, as a team, they unpack the content and figure out from all of that. I mean, you've seen some of the documents from DPI. Some of them are one page and some of them are an entire packet. So they have to unpack it and pull through all of that. What are the power standards? And power standards you'll see are at the bottom. What are the skills and the content that are absolutely necessary for a student to know and be able to do for that standard or that objective? The next one that I have is facilitator. And that is someone, each PLC or PLT needs not a leader of the team at all. That's why we're not calling them leaders. We're calling them facilitators, because there shouldn't be any power struggles within a team. So there's not someone who's the top-notch dog and they're in there and they're going to lead the team. It's a facilitator. It's someone who's a point person for that PLC or that PLT that goes back to the PLC leadership team, which is a whole school team that works together. And they make sure that the focus is kept in PLC meetings. They make sure that the goals are being met and that the team is working smoothly. And the next one, we've already talked about collaboration, and we've got a quote in there for you from Learning by Doing. And then we've got common formative assessments, which a lot of you have probably heard of before, CFAs. So we want to make sure that these are designed by the team and they help to determine student mastery. They identify the areas for students where they need intervention, where they could use some extension because they've already mastered that content, and it helps you improve your practice as you go. D4 talks a lot about summative assessments being an autopsy, and I know that's morbid. I'm an EMT, so my brain thinks like that. So D4 talks about it as being an autopsy. And once you get to that autopsy, you can't help that person. You can learn from the mistakes, but you can't help them. A CFA is a physical. It's that checkup where you can see, okay, what's going on and how can we help to support you? So let's make sure we keep in mind that we want to keep doing physicals on our kids. And then the norms are really important for a PLT or a PLT team to operate efficiently and effectively. So for norms, it's those rules of operation that the group members determine. It's not something that I lay out for any of my PLCs or PLTs. It's something that the teachers in that group determine, I'm going to operate like this. Rachel, do we go over some common norms later, or do we talk about it now?
We talked a little bit about that just when we did the agenda template. We can do that now or we can do it then, either way.
Let's do it when we do the agenda.
Okay, cool. All right, so when you get ready to kind of embark on this PLC journey, the D4 talks a lot about there are things that you have to be tight and there are things that you can be kind of loose with. So these were some of the ones we tried to give you some good examples of things that we are tight and loose on here in our school. As far as the schedule goes, we are extremely tight on the prioritization. We call it flex time. It's focused learning experiences. That's our acronym. Our flex time and our PLT time is embedded within our daily schedule. And we're going to show you an example of the schedule in just a minute. But it's a non-negotiable. When we first started this whole process, we kind of went back and forth. We live in the mountains. We get a lot of snow days. And so we kind of went back and forth on, like, if we have a 2-hour delay, are we going to keep flex? And if it's a priority, we have to keep it. So what we ended up doing is, like, on 2-hour delay days, normally flex is 40 minutes a day. On 2-hour delays, we shorten it by 10 minutes and students meet for 30, but it's still there because that's a priority for us. That's something that we're really tight on. Our loose aspect of that, we don't care where teams meet, as long as they notify their department administrators, because we go to the PLC meetings and work with the teachers on a weekly basis. So as long as they notify us of where they're meeting, if they want to meet in the picnic shelter, if they want to meet outside on the, in the courtyard on the picnic tables, they can do that. We don't care where they meet, as long as they let us know where they're going to be. Operationally, we are very tight on the fact that teams have to develop norms and they have to use protocols. We don't care which ones those are. And I guess we can go ahead and talk about norms a little bit right here. One of the norms, most of our PLCs have come up with the norm that they're going to use technology professionally and responsibly when they're in their PLC meetings. That means that, like, if there's an emergency and my kid's school calls and I need to step out, I can do that. I'm also not going to be texting my husband and saying, hey, what's for dinner? Can you pick up the Walmart grocery order? That's not an appropriate time. It's not an appropriate use of technology for me to be able to do that. So most of them, they decide what norms they're going to use, what protocols they're going to operate under, but we don't dictate that. As far as instruction goes, the focus on learning, we are extremely tight on that. And we had a couple questions in our presentation yesterday about club time. We've gone back and forth on that. We've kind of danced around that issue for the last several years. We do not have clubs that meet during our flex time because the focus is supposed to be on learning. It's not a time just for clubs to necessarily sit and, hold a club meeting or something like that. It's supposed to be focused on instruction and on learning. However, we do not dictate the instructional methods that our teachers use to deliver their content. We had a lot of concern among teachers when we first started this process that they felt like they were going to have to use a scripted curriculum. They were not going to have the flexibility to be able to use different instructional methods in their classroom. We do not, under any circumstances, dictate that. We do ask that once they have delivered instruction, once they've completed their CFA, and when they meet in their PLTs, to do that data analysis. If for some reason Tiara's kids scored much higher on an assessment than my kids did, we do ask that they have those discussions about the instructional methods that they used, because maybe her method was way more effective than mine. It may also be that my kids, that we taught that concept on a day when we got out of school early because of snow, and y'all know that at that point, as soon as the S word starts getting thrown around, nobody's paying attention. Maybe that's what happened. But we ask that they have those conversations. For curriculum, our tight is that teams have to identify those power standards. We don't dictate to them which power standards they choose. They're the content experts. I could really try to go into a math 3 class and look at the content standards and try to figure out what is most important for kids to learn in a math 3 class. But those math teachers are going to know that far easier and far better than I could ever know it. So we don't dictate that part. As far as assessment, we require that they develop and utilize CFAs. We don't tell them what format they have to be or when they have to implement those CFAs. We give them typically a time range to implement their CFAs, but we don't tell them the day that they have to do it. And then as far as data analysis, we ask that they complete data analysis and that they use that data to make decisions, but we don't tell them what protocols they need to use for that data analysis. And we don't tell them, once they've done that and they've determined which kids need either intervention or enrichment, we don't tell them which teacher has to deliver those. They get to determine that on their own. Montreal Flex is focused learning experiences. That's our little acronym. Okay, so this is another quote that we tried to put up here for y'all. We tried to sort of sprinkle these through, and we're not going to read them to you, but they're so important. That idea of reciprocal accountability. I told y'all a minute ago, as leaders in this school, if you want this to be successful, you got to be neck deep in it too. You can't just tell the teachers how they're going to implement a PLC and what they're going to do with it. You have to make the case to them for why this process works. And it's so important for you to understand the process before you try to get that buy-in from your teachers and before you try to implement something like this. So everything, we're going to show you guys a sample agenda template that our teachers use when they meet in their PLCs. But everything that we do is centered around the 4 critical questions from DO4. What do we want students to know and be able to do? That's your power standards. What is it important that kids take away from your class? How do we know when they know it? That's your common formative assessments. How are you going to assess whether they have mastered that knowledge or not? And then it kind of diverges from there. What are we going to do if they don't know it? That's your intervention piece. And then what are we going to do if they do know it? That's your enrichment. So everything that we do is centered around those 4 questions, and our agenda templates, everything is set up based on those.
Okay, so this is just sort of a process that we've put together for administrators and the leadership team to keep our work flowing. So first, and as you can see, this keeps going around. We start at research, but we keep going around and around. That's why we've had several different iterations over the past 8 years. We're still learning what's best for students, and your student population changes, and sometimes their needs change, and so we have to look at research again and figure out what's best for them. So we do our research. We send teachers to all different places in the United States to do strategic PLC learning, small groups of teachers, and then they come back and they train other teachers and they train their departments. We also send administrators to local PLC training. Then we brought Solution Tree in for a 2 or 3 day live training here at the high school. We have, we allow people to go to PLC Solution Tree training virtually. We try to do a few things with little pockets of teachers here and there. We always try to make sure that our leadership team is doing their research with PLC processes, just to make sure that we are doing the best that we can for all involved. And then we have to gather a leadership team. And I'm thankful here we have phenomenal teachers in Watauga County schools. And so we had teachers who came to us and said, we want to implement a PLC process. How can we get this started for the whole school? And so we've had teachers start this progress from the beginning, and then we just help support and we give them the resources that they need. But you need a whole school leadership team. Our leadership team is typically between 12 to 20 teachers, depending on it. We meet every Thursday, unless the world is breaking loose. We meet every Thursday at
7:40.
And I know for all of you who are elementary schools, you're like, really, you're complaining about 7:30? I am complaining about 7:30 because I'm here at work until 6 or 7 at night. So I am complaining, and I apologize. But we do meet at the beginning, before students get here, every Thursday. And the leadership team just helps make decisions on scheduling and implementation. They get feedback from teachers. The leadership team gets feedback from students, because the way that we operate with students in flex time, it's both pieces. It's PLC and it's flex all together, and it embeds itself. So we need student feedback sometimes. So we bring in all different populations of students to present to the leadership team, and we ask them questions to make sure that we've got their voice in the decisions. We also have to make sure we share and train the processes with the whole faculty. So every faculty member needs to have the same information as anybody else, so that we're all operating within the same mind frame. So, we've had 2 years of just craziness and different staff members, and it's been difficult. So we're going to do a PLC refresher the first week of teachers coming back. And we're going to really sit down with all teachers and go over the PLC process and how we operate here at Watauga High School. We've got to train our facilitators. Remember, we talked about having a facilitator in each team, in each PLC team or PLC. And so we have to train them and make sure that they understand that their support and role is to help that PLC team run smoothly and efficiently. And then we organize our PLC groups. Our master schedule is first and foremost student need based, but the second piece that we bring in is PLC. How are those teachers' schedules going to affect which PLC that they're in? So we organize those PLC groups, and then we just support the process. We're not down there doing all the work of the PLC. We're just supporting them. So we attend the meetings that we can. We go in and we give them resources, whether it be physical resources, financial resources, training, all of that stuff. And then it keeps going.
One thing, when you're looking at gathering your leadership team, if you're going to implement a PLC initiative in your school, it cannot be top down. It cannot be that an administrator comes in and dictates, this is what you're going to do. I go back to that tight and loose. There are things that we are tight on. But first and foremost, the PLC process is teacher-led. It's very much a grassroots kind of process. And I throughout this whole, I keep saying process, and I'm sorry. Throughout this whole process, we've had some teachers who felt like maybe we were moving too slowly. There are times that I've felt like we were moving too slowly. But it is not something that you can go in as an administrator or as a leader in the building or in the district and say, thou shalt do this, because it will fail every time. It has to be something, you have to get input from other people. You have to be able to gather that support by including people and having them engaged in the process, or it won't work. And one thing, when we were first starting all this, they talk about in Dufour's model that there are people who are on the bus. There are people who they immediately buy into the whole PLC deal, and they're ready to go. And then there are people that are walking beside the bus, and they're kind of, they're a little skeptical, and they're not really sure how this is going to go. And I remember sitting in a meeting and talking about this, and I kind of raised my hand and I said, what about the people that are the speed bumps? You're going to have those too. You're going to have people that are like, this is not for me. You're never going to have 100% buy-in. I don't think. Maybe they do in Rick DeForce school. But we have not yet experienced 100% buy-in. But the longer that you do this process, the more people start to realize that this really does work, and it really is good for kids. And it's not another canned program that you bought and we're just going to try to stick a Band-Aid on a problem. This is a meaningful way to change student achievement and to help your teachers become more collaborative and more successful. And the speed bumps will either eventually start walking or they'll get run over. So whichever one.
So that leads us into just living the PLC life. It's teacher led, and it has to be part of the school day. It can't be something extra that we make them do. It's part, and here we operate it as an everyday occurrence. And you'll see a schedule here in just a few slides, and you'll see how we make it happen every day. But the focus is always on learning. We do use MTSS interventions. And we do provide maintenance and extension programs within the Flex operations. It's a shared responsibility. Every single person in this building has a part to play in the PLC process. Student services is not left out. EC teachers are not left out. And we'll keep talking about how each of those people play an important role in the entire PLC process here. It's embedded in our culture. It's just part of how we operate. Again, all of this is something you just have to determine how it needs to start at your school. But something that I've seen when you're talking about trying to get teacher buy-in for the whole PLC process, when it's part of your operations and it's embedded, just asking questions. That's what we talked about at the beginning. A lot of the PLC process is asking questions. And so having them take a hard look at data, and you can't ignore what the data says. You may disagree on how to remedy what the data says, but you can't disagree that there is data out there that promotes either the PLC process or your individual school or classroom data that says something is going on. And so that PLC process will bring those to light. And eventually, even if they're not on the bus, they're still with it. So this is another quote from Learning by Doing. And it discusses mission, that it's shared, it's co-created, and it fully engages others. And one important thing that Venables says in his facilitating book is that you have to build the team before you need it. You have to have that team in place. It can't be that leadership team is the first thing that you build, which is why we have that on the wheel. So build that team, get teachers from all different departments and sometimes the people on our leadership team are really not that excited about PLC, and that's okay. Let them come in. So our leadership team is open to anyone to come in, but the people who are there every week have decision-making power. And they can come in, and we've had teachers come in who didn't really understand the process, and they weren't happy with how we were operating. And they came in and they listened, and we operate the PLT leadership team the same way that a PLT would work. We have an agenda, we have norms, we use protocols. Like we said at the beginning, it's all about mirror images. It's about being that model. So we have teachers sometimes come in and say, oh, this is how it works. And then it makes sense to them. And it's just all about giving them that other opportunity. It's the same thing we do with our students. Let everyone see it from different lights and different ways, and eventually they'll all get on board.
Okay, so this we're gonna go a little bit slower right here so that y'all can really understand what our schedule looks like here at school. This is a copy of the schedule that we share out with faculty and staff. And if you look at the bottom where it says PLT, that bottom row up there, that we do a student and parent friendly version as well. We just remove that because it's information they don't really need to know. So on the right-hand side, you can see our daily schedule. This is a work in progress. We're actually editing this for the upcoming school year. We're still not sure. I mean, you can see down at the bottom, we're hoping that we can have 3 lunches. It could be 5 like we had last year. So we haven't finalized all that. But our flex block for this upcoming school year is going to be every day from 10 to 10:40. So 40 minutes every day embedded within the schedule for students to get extra help, get enrichment, and for teachers to work and collaborate together. So just to give you an example, if you'll take a look at Monday. So priority sessions are like the top priority as far as students being assigned to sessions for that day. So on Monday, CTE and student services have priority. That means that if my CTE teacher or my counselor assigns me to come to them, that trumps everything else. If I don't have a CTE teacher or a counselor who assigns me to a session, but my science teacher assigns me to a session, I still have to go to science. The difference in priority and secondary comes in if there's a conflict. So like if CTE and math both assigned me to a session on Monday, CTE would trump math for that day. Underneath that, you can see learning labs. So we have gone through this changes that our whole schedule, our process changes every year. Sometimes it changes in the middle of the year because if we're doing something that doesn't work, we got to make an adjustment. We can't wait till the end of the year and just hold tight because that's how it is. We have to make an adjustment. So when we first started this process, we had students in priority and secondary sessions. And then we had what we called open sessions in the gym, the commons area, the media center, and the auditorium. The commons area, I'm like scratching my neck because I feel like it gives me hives to even like think back to it. The commons area was not productive. There were kids that were like sitting around hanging out. It was just not controlled. We didn't know, like we didn't have a good handle on where kids were, what they were doing, and that sort of thing. And remember, we talked about we want to keep a focus on learning. So the next year we got rid of the commons area and we implemented learning labs. So on Mondays, all of the English teachers and all of the world language teachers have what we call a learning lab. That means that their classroom is open and students will be able to go and sit in their classroom and work. For those teachers, that's an additional day. If there's a student that they need to assign, if those kids don't have any other conflict, if they haven't been assigned to a priority or a secondary session, that's an opportunity for English and world language teachers to work with their kids again. Now we also have independent study rooms. So up until this year, we have had the gym as an option for students in one of those open sessions. Notice we rebranded it. It's no longer open session. It's an independent study session. This year we have eliminated the gym because, again, I'm sure y'all can imagine the gym was not super productive. I'm not sure that there was a focus on learning going on in the gym. So now our independent study locations are going to be the media center and the auditorium. And our PE teachers on Monday are going to be supervising students. You'll notice on there that PE has 3 days of supervision in those independent study areas. What we noticed after the first couple of years was that our PE teachers were not assigning students to come to Flex. They didn't really need an enormous amount of enrichment or intervention in their PE classes. And so our PE teachers they carry the bulk of the supervision duties. And then the bottom row is going to be our PLTs that meet. So on Mondays, history, arts, and EC all meet in their PLT groups. All world history teachers meet together. All visual art teachers meet together. And they go through the PLC process and that sort of thing. Tiara, what am I leaving out? Oh, I know, numbers. Do you have something you want to say?
Before we go over numbers, I just wanted to poke in there that health and PE does have a priority session. It's not that they don't have kids that they need to call. They just don't have the number of kids that maybe someone else needs to call. And then as you can see, student services is included on here. And EC teachers have their own PLT time, but we've also scheduled them where they can go in and go to math priority sessions or the math PLT so that they go where they are needed and they go where they can have the most impact on students.
And EC teachers are scheduled for their PLT on days. We typically have co-taught classes in English, science, and math. And so EC teachers are scheduled for their specific PLT day on a day that it doesn't conflict with any of those. In order to be able to do this, we have about 1,500 kids in our building. In order to be able to do this, every kid has to have a place to go. We have to have rooms that can contain all of those people. And so we have given our teachers target numbers for the number of kids that we want in their sessions. So priority sessions, we want about 10 kids. Those sessions need to be a little bit smaller so that teachers can work one-on-one with students and really get them the intervention and enrichment that they need. Secondary sessions, we shoot for about 18. Learning labs are about 25. We can hold about 100 kids in the media center and about 300 in the auditorium. And that's how we had to do it in order to be able to eliminate first the commons area and then the gym. Okay, what questions do y'all have about this stuff so far? We're at the question point.
That's a great question, Lindsay. That's a great question. Okay. So let me ask you, do you have your leadership team yet? Do you have a leadership team of teachers and administrators and support staff? Okay, good. Okay, so if they're practicing the PLC process, one thing that we did, Rachel, was it 3 or 4 years ago? We recorded our leadership team meetings, and we have a Canvas hub for PLC, and we posted out little snippets of us meeting, whether it be us using a protocol, us developing our norms. And so teachers now have access to review those short little videos if their team is having that type of issue. So let me keep reading your question. Or not facilitated appropriately. Okay. Do you have facilitators for each PLT? And while you're answering that, if you have facilitators for each team, and then you'll need to sit down and you'll need to train the facilitators. They need a little help. And that's where this book is really important to the facilitators for each team, because they can go through here and it helps them refresh what their job is. I was thinking of refreshing for the first half of the semester. Okay. Yes, Lindsay. So you're on the right track. I mean, you're progressing through it. So I think, yes. So good question. We actually visit all of our PLTs. So you'll see on Monday, which we are down an administrator in AP, and we're hiring a new one, hopefully in day now. And so our departments may switch up. But last year, Rachel was the department head over history and arts. So if this were the same, she would have to transfer between all the history PLTs, which, Rachel, there are 5 history PLTs.
There are 3 history and 3 arts.
Okay. So there are 6 PLTs that she would be rotating through to review and help support. In some PLTs that we visit, we're really just listening, and we may be a quiet, listener and watcher and then leave the room. In some PLCs, the team may need a little extra help. And so we may actually run a protocol with them. It just depends on what each room needs. And then I like your idea of the second half being present, but assigning a teacher facilitator. I think that's fine. We did not have team facilitators for the first probably 2 or 3 years that we ran through this. And bringing on a facilitator for each team has been really important. And it's run really well. And the teams learn to appreciate and respect that facilitator. But again, they're not a power player. It's not that they are above the team by any means. It's just to help them work through the whole process.
I think, Lindsay, I would almost be a little hesitant to run just for our school, and it may work in other places. For our school, I would almost be a little hesitant to have an administrator run the PLC, because there is, whether we want it to be that way or not, and we are not people that pull rank or anything like that, but whether you want it to be that way or not, there's a perception of a power differential between an administrator and a teacher. And when you as the administrator are in the PLC facilitating that PLC, in some cases they're just going to defer to you. In some cases it may be kind of an antagonistic difference there, because a teacher may not appreciate you being there and running their PLC. And I think we have tried to be pretty careful about having it be very much teacher led. Now, if there is an issue in a PLC, and I've been there, we've done it, where PLCs were not being productive. We're going to talk in just a few minutes about how you kind of monitor that activity and that productivity. If there is a situation where a PLC is not being very productive, then we can go in. We still don't facilitate the PLC, but we'll go in and try to help the facilitator get them back on track. We also do several PLC facilitator trainings throughout the year to try to equip them with the tools that they need to be more successful, and to figure out, okay, how do I get people back on track when they go down the rabbit hole? Those sorts of things. We have not done it as using administrators as the PLC facilitators. We tend to try to model for them in our own meetings and not in their specific meetings, if that makes sense.
We've had teachers come into our leadership team meetings that we have, most of our leadership team is made up of teachers. And so we always ask them at the beginning of our meeting, how are your team meetings going? And if they're having an issue, then we can talk through it. But we also, sometimes we gather for them, if there's a known issue in one of the history PLCs, then we ask the teachers, how would they react if we did this? And what kind of support do they need specifically? And then they tell us how to implement or how to support them.
And we also, they have agendas, and we'll show you a sample of that in just a minute too. They have weekly agendas that they have to complete. That's one of our tight components. So they have to complete that weekly agenda. They turn it in ahead of time to Canvas, and out, if we have time as the administrators, we try to look at them. We can't always get to them, but our instructional coach goes through all of their agendas. And if there is an issue, if there's something that they need to alert us to, if they need our help, they put that in their agenda, and then we can prioritize going to that PLT session for that week. Our teachers are also usually pretty open with us. So like if they know that something's coming up, if there was some data that came out and there's going to be some prickly moments in that PLT, sometimes they'll just shoot us a text and say, hey, can you come to our PLT meeting this week and help us to, stay on track and help to diffuse any situation that may come up. So they're usually pretty good about asking for our help if they need it. Any other questions about the schedule or anything else that we've talked about so far?
And you'll see the schedule again in a few slides from now, talking about it from a different angle. So you'll see it again.
We've got about 30 minutes left. We want to make sure we get to everything that y'all need. Okay, so now what we're going to do is kind of transition into some of those tools that we use to help our teachers be collaborative in their PLTs, and then help you be able to organize your resources better so that you can support what those teachers are doing and the work that they need to complete. So we use G Suite. We're a Google district. We use G Suite for pretty much everything. I've almost forgotten how to use Word, but that's okay. So for docs, we use Google Docs to create all of our agendas, to do any kind of meeting notes. We ask them, like I said, they create their agenda ahead of time, and then they take meeting notes within that agenda so that there's a record of what they did. They can go back and they can look at it. They can assign action steps, all those different things. We use Docs to share out specific protocols that might be useful for them or anything that we need them to do. And then they can also look at, with Docs, they can look at their revision history and see where changes have been made to documents, so that they can see anything that they need to go back and edit or anything like that. We love Docs because everybody can edit the same document. They can see any edits live in real time, and then it allows them to put comments in and to make assignments for action steps within that specific document. We use slides to do schedules. The schedule we showed you just a second ago was created in Google Slides. We use that for any kind of presentation, data presentations, and then we create templates within slides and share that out to teachers. We're doing a thing this upcoming school year. We're going to do door templates. So all of our teachers will have the same kind of template outside of their door that talks about their post-secondary path. We try to promote post-secondary awareness for our students. And it'll have their flex schedule, when they're available for students to come and work with them and that sort of thing. And we do that using the Edit Master slides, which we can show y'all. You're welcome to attend some of our other sessions. We'll show you how to do that. And we use Google Sheets for all of our data and for tracking student progress, making sure that they get where they need to be. We do that with group analysis, and we also do that with some transparency in data collection. It can be, PLCs, it can be frustrating and a little bit, it makes teachers nervous sometimes when they have to go in front of their peers and show them their data. Because at that point, it's not just, it's not just people thinking that they know what goes on in my classroom. There is hard data there that says whether my kids were successful on this or not. And sometimes it's hard for teachers to separate that from, that doesn't mean if my kids didn't do well, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad teacher. It just means that I need to make instructional adjustments. And so, sometimes that's really difficult for people to do. So this is the sample of the PLT agenda, and we're going to go ahead and show you. We had a lot of questions about this yesterday, so we're going to go ahead and show you exactly what this looks like. We do this in Google Docs. It's all editable. It goes out. They get the template, and then they create one every week. And I need to zoom in. There we go. Okay, so at the top, we made this nice little header in Canva. They have a link to all of our Canvas resources so that they can use that in every PLT meeting if they need to. It helps if I'm scrolling down the actual document and not the shared screen. They go in and they put which team members were there for each day, and then what are their goals for that day. Do they need to create a new CFA? Do they need to look at the data from the last CFA? Do they need to unpack their content standards? Whatever it is that they're hoping to accomplish for that day's particular meeting. We started doing this last year, especially during COVID, because there was, y'all know, it was just pure craziness. So we started doing some SEL check-ins with our teachers. A lot of them will use emojis. We usually have to explain to our principal what they mean, because he does not use emojis and he does not know what they mean at all. But they'll go through and they put kind of how they're feeling. What are some celebrations for the week? What are some things that have gone really well? They always list their team norms, and that we review those at the beginning of every single meeting. So if one of your team norms is responsible use of technology, we remind ourselves of that at the beginning of every single meeting. If one of your team norms is that you're going to start on time, end on time, that's another one that we typically use. We remind ourselves of that at the beginning of every single meeting.
Another team norm that a lot of our teams have, and we got it from, I think, the Venables book, is leave your ego at the door. And so we have mixed groups before. We have some of them are veteran teachers with one BT, or we have a room full of 3 BTs and one veteran teacher, or some, in the middle between there. And it's important that everyone leaves their ego at the door. No one is perfect. And even if you are an exemplary teacher, sometimes your instruction doesn't meet the students. And that's where we find out that with data. And as long as we're leaving our ego out the door, and we just come in and we're all working together to support all of our students. That's another norm that a lot of our teams have, is that it's not my students, it's not your students, they are our students. All of those students are ours. And that's also supporting the PLC process. And that's something that we're still growing in. We still haven't quite gotten to the point in our flex system where we identify that this student needs help with equations and math, and another teacher in the department may do their flex time with them. We haven't quite gotten there yet. And sometimes we don't need to do that, but that's our hope, and where we're hoping to grow in the next few years is where we do wraparound support for students, and we do content-based flex sessions for any of our students.
Like we told you earlier, our agenda is organized around those 4 questions, the 4 important questions in the Do-For model. So our teachers, they may go in, if they have already unpacked their content standards and they know what students need to be able to do in this particular agenda, they may not have anything under question 1. All of their work may be under question 2. How do we know they're learning? That they may be developing CFAs. And so everything in that week's agenda may be focused under question 2. It may not be. They may have things sprinkled in around with different questions because they may need to do work in different areas. But we have organized their template. Yes, absolutely. We'll get those to you. We've organized the template around those 4 critical questions so that their emphasis stays in those areas. We also have some links here about possible tasks. So possible things, if they've not unpacked their content standards, they can go to those links and they can see what are some things that they might need to do under question 1 so that they know that they've completed that.
This agenda is in here as a view only. So when you get the presentation, you can click it. You'll have a view only access, and then you could just make a copy for your team if you want to use it.
Yeah, and edit it, as you see fit. This is what works for us. It may not be what works for you. We also try to do parking lot is where they put any questions that they may have about things that are going on that particular day, and then they do action steps for the next meeting and who's going to be responsible for that. So this is this is how we organize our PLT process.
Yes, Sharon.
Hi. So you said the template you do in Google Forms, or repeat that again?
It's a Google Doc.
A Google Doc.
Yes, ma'am.
So when they finish it and submit it, I'm assuming it goes into a folder, or
we've actually done that.
We've
done that in the past. We used to have Google folders for each different PLT, and they submitted them there. We've actually started using Canvas. So we go in and we create like an assignment in Canvas. And then for each week, the facilitator just goes in and they submit their agenda as the assignment so that they're all in one place. And the speed grader feature in Canvas is fantastic. because you can just click through their agendas real quick. You can read through them, see if there's anything that they need help with. And then we sort of split ourselves off based on where we need to go. I think this year we're going to try to be a little bit more efficient with that. And so like Mondays are a crazy day for me. It is crazy town because I've got 6 different PLTs that I need to try to get to. I can't usually get to all 6 PLTs at once. And so what we're going to try to do is be a little bit more strategic with our calendars. And like if I need to go to the World History PLT, but I know that American History also needs help, Tiara may go to the American History PLT for me. We split that up amongst our administrative leadership team, and then our instructional coach also goes and helps with that.
We've been using an autocrat. We created an autocrat form that uploads into a folder. So that's kind of what we've been using. And I know that anytime you've created a form and then try to go back and look at that, it throws it into a spreadsheet. I want to claw my eyes out.
Yes. Now I get it.
Like, no. All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions about the agenda? Okay, we're going to go back to the presentation. So y'all have access to that, and you've got the link to be able to go in and make a copy of that agenda and use it, like I said, however you feel like you need to. We are also trying to be, like I said at the beginning, we're trying to be a little bit more data driven in the decisions that we make. And so we're pretty transparent with our teachers and our staff about where we are as far as data. Now, we do not, I'm the accountability person. I do all the EOCs and ACT and all that stuff here at school. Tiara does all the CTE post assessments. So we sort of live in that accountability world. But I tell teachers all the time, that's not the be all end all. Yes, it's important. We know that, but that's not the be all end all. And I don't want our teachers to look at, on here, I don't want them to look at, that the 58.33% of our kids that were proficient in Math 1 in 2017-18 and be like, well, we stink. We don't want them to look at that. I think we're much more concerned in the data realm with sharing out like the domains of the test. Where are places that we can make some instructional adjustments to try to serve our kids better and make sure that they have what they need to be successful. We've seen enormous gains in our proficiency and in our growth during the implementation of the PLC process. We've also seen enormous gains just in teacher-student relationships, in our kids, wanting to come to school. I think when we first started the whole flex process, that first year, teachers and students especially, or students and parents especially, they didn't really understand what we were doing. I would have phone calls with parents and they would say, well, like, I let my kid check out and go to Bojangles during flex. No, that's not what we want to do. Now we are at the point that I think if we ever tried to get rid of flex, they would run us out of town. It would be the end of us. They would have our jobs because our kids use that. If they don't, there's no reason for a kid to ever leave this building and not know how to do their math homework, ever. A lot of our kids, our athletes, use flex time. If they don't get assigned to a session, they go to one of those learning labs or they go to one of those independent study sessions and they get their homework done. Our kids that have jobs after school, our kids that don't have internet at home. This has been a total game changer for us as far as our students being successful. And it's not just with testing success. It's in our graduation rate. It's in our ACT scores. It's in student, being happy here at school and being successful. Okay.
So we have, currently we're using Canvas, but you can also use a shared Google Drive. And we still have a shared Google Drive for lots of the processes that we use in PLT. But we have these shared drives, whether it be through Canvas or Google, for 2 reasons: for culture and for accountability. So for culture, we have to continue to build that common language and common operation so that's just embedded in our practice. And we all want to make sure that we're sharing resources in one place so that everyone has access to it. It's really important. We don't have a large turnover rate here, but even a few new teachers a year, if they don't understand and know the PLC process and how it's being implemented here, it's hard for them to get on board. It's hard for them to support the students and to be part of the PLT teams if they don't know where we came from, where we're going, and our goals. and for them to be part of developing those goals. And so we use a Canvas hub for, we call it, is it the Pioneer Pride page, Rachel? And so we have a place for all the different things that we need to do just as teachers and administrators, but we have one specific to PLC. And then secondly, it's for accountability. PLCs can upload those meeting agendas. They do. That's one of our types. They have to upload their agendas. It's not that we grade them. It's not that we say, oh, you didn't fill in this box. It's so that we can see, oh, hey, my name's on there because they want me to come by on this one. Or, hey, this group, they just talked about doing this really cool interactivity with some science standard. And I think that this PLT over here, the CTE teachers in foods would really gain something from this. So then we can pair them up. Because if we can see what's going on in the whole building, we can help support that. If they're having an issue here and this team is doing it really well, let's pair them up for one meeting and let them see what's going on. And then it also helps support task facilitation. Again, we are here to help facilitate and help to support the teachers in the work that they're doing. We train them, we throw resources at them, but we're not doing the work. So we have to help facilitate their tasks. All right, Edficiency is something that's actually going to be new for us. So Edficiency is a flex time management system where all the students and teachers are uploaded into this program, and then we can schedule them out. So let's talk just for a moment about why we're moving to a paid program to schedule students into flex time. When we first started implementing students into PLT time, so I think the first few years that we implemented PLT, we actually we did it on maybe Wednesdays, and for the first hour, teachers met in PLTs, and then students were supposed to do some kind of activity, and they had large areas. They just ended up not coming on Wednesdays.
Bojangles loved us on Wednesday morning.
Yes, and it didn't work. So we started embedding it in the afternoon. Again, giving teachers 30 minutes a day, to once a month didn't work. So we realized we had to embed it in the daily schedule, and that we had to get those students in on this piece in order for the teachers to have time to do their work. So we implemented flexible learning experiences, and it was embedded in our schedule. But then we got to thinking, okay, if students have all this choice of where they're going to go, how do we keep track of them, and how do we know where they are, and are they attending the spot that they were supposed to? So we decided to do QR codes, and every room had a QR code. And the students would take their little Chromebook and they would scan the QR code. And for the first week or so, they were doing it. They listened to us. They did their check-ins. We had a series of questions that we could change, and it was wonderful, except it no longer got used. And so we didn't know where kids were. We couldn't take attendance. A teacher would say, this kid didn't show up to my priority session. Where were they? I don't know. And so we had to stop that. So then we went to Google Calendar, and we thought, okay, let's embed respect and responsibility in our students. Let's treat them like adults, because we had to work at a high school. And let's say teachers are gonna send them a calendar invitation. The student has to accept it. We'll give them reminders every morning, and they'll log in. And because it's on their calendar, they will attend that session. And again, not as many issues as QR codes. Absolutely, it's actually worked pretty well for the past 3 years with the Google Calendar. It was okay. But it's not perfect. We still can't account for every student. There still seems to be some confusion. We even told the kids, put it on your phone and you'll get a reminder. They don't care about anything but Snapchat popping up on their personal phone. So here's where we came to. We decided we need a location management system. We need something that says at a click of a button where every student in our building is. And it also allows for those students who don't get invited and then don't find a place for themselves. This system will automatically schedule them. So it's better accountability. No one gets lost in the shuffle, and we can use it for all types of events. So at the beginning of this presentation, we said we are going to be the model. So we've got this system. It's called Edficiency. It's similar to a system called Flex Time Manager, and we've looked into a couple of different programs, but this is the one that we landed on. We feel like it's going to best fit our culture and how we manage our school. So with Edficiency, we are going to the first week of teacher return. We have lots of concurrent sessions. We have PD mandatory sessions. We have activities, and we have snacks going on. So we're going to load the teachers as if they're students into Edficiency, and we're going to go ahead and schedule them their first week back into the mandatory sessions. And then they get to choose in the system which optional sessions that they want to go to. So it's going to be really great for the teacher to see it from the student side. And then the first week back with students, the students are going to get to choose. We're going to have a club fair during our flex time because the first week, students and teachers don't know each other. So we can't get them to invite people to flex because they just don't know what the needs are yet. So the first week back, we're going to do club sessions during flex time. And we're going to use efficiency for the students to get to figure out how that works. And then by the second week of school, we are running on flex. We know where every kid is. Our attendance monitor can look up kids for checkout. And it's supposedly going to be a seamless process, and we'll let you know how it goes. Okay, another quote by Learning by Doing, and what we highlighted for you here is that it takes steps. It's a process. We have to be transparent with our evidence. We have to showcase that data, and we have to be honest with each other. I've worked for Watauga County Schools for 11 years, 12 years, 11 years. I don't know. One of those. I've lived here my whole life, so it doesn't. I could just say I've worked here my entire life, but that's okay. So for the last 10 years, we've done it different ways. And there have been years where I have really fought for something and I thought, wow, this is wonderful. And then realized, it didn't work so well. So we just have to keep going and be transparent with that. Focus on that student learning. And remember, we all work in teams. There's always someone that we should be working with and supporting each other.
All right, y'all, we've got about 10 minutes left. So we're going to fly through these next few slides and try to make sure that we get through everything.
Oh, it's still me. Okay. Yeah. Protocols. I forgot. Sorry. Protocols. We wanted to give you some examples. These are linked in the slides. You'll be able to see them. But we take a lot of our protocols from the school reform initiative, as well as NSRF, and then the facilitating teacher teams and authentic PLCs. Rachel, if you want to just pop through the pictures and I'll kind of talk through it. So typically protocols are a half a page to 2 pages long. They're hardly ever longer than that. And it just it grounds the team in the work that they're doing. So if you'll pop over to the irks and quirks, this is a good protocol for a new team who needs to figure out what are the things that if you do this, I'm walking out the door. Or what are the things that, like, I just want to let you know, I try to say, common sayings, but I mess them up constantly. So know that. And if I say something wrong, just try to gather the meaning and we'll move on. So that's an Arcs and Quirks protocol. Another one that we use is the North and South, or Notice and Wonder protocol. And that's good for looking at data, where you can just basically, every group silently looks at the data, they write down their notice and wonders, and then you share aloud. It grounds your work, it makes it more efficient, and it helps you not saying squirrel, and it gets back to work.
Okay, we're going to skip questions, and y'all can ask them at the end if that's okay. All right, so the last piece that we want to talk to you guys about is how to make sure that the work that you're doing in your PLCs is efficient, effective, all of those E words, and making sure that you have ways that you can give good, solid feedback to your teacher groups. The leader's job in a PLC is to make sure, we always think about, we are support staff. It is our job to put the structures in place, to put the processes and procedures in place that allow the teachers to do the work that needs to be done with kids. So making sure our job is to make sure that we can facilitate and help teachers to do the things that they need to do to get the results with students that we want. So some of the things that we try to make sure that we focus on: goals, voice, and actions. So are the goals, is the work that's going on in the PLC consistent with our overall vision and mission within the school? Do the team members within that PLC consistently follow the norms? Do they meet the group goals within that PLC? And if not, how can we help them to do that? What resources can we give them to help them to do that? As far as voice, the facilitators are almost like the go-between between their specific PLT and the leadership team. So are we equipping them with the resources that they need to be able to do that job effectively? That facilitating teacher teams book, the Venables book, we purchased a copy of that. It's pretty cheap. It's on Amazon. We purchased a copy of that for every single PLC facilitator in the building. and I think they may have purchased it for all the facilitators within the district. We're trying to branch out a little bit now, but making sure that we give the facilitators the resources and the training that they need to be successful. We also want to make sure that everybody in the PLC has a voice. Trust is a super important component of a PLC process. And sometimes within a PLC, you have a teacher that's pretty vocal. Sometimes it's a veteran teacher who feels like they know what they're doing and everybody else kind of needs to fall in line with them. And sometimes you have maybe a less vocal member or a newer teacher who may not feel comfortable with sharing their opinions. That's not going to be the most effective way to run a PLC. You need them to have a voice and to be equal members of the group. And so our role is to make sure that we help them to do that. And then looking at the actions, how is the PLC process impacting student learning? Is what we're doing having a positive impact on student learning? And if not, how can we get to that point? And then looking at, is the PLC itself working through the process to fidelity? Sometimes people want to just do this. It's kind of a PLC in name only. They just want to kind of, go by and do the things without really working through the process. They just kind of do it at face value. That's not going to work. And so as administrators, our role is to make sure that the PLC is participating in the work to fidelity. And if it's not, then sometimes we have to have hard conversations with people. And that's okay too.
All right, so let's talk about really quickly action steps for administrators for individual PLCs, and then next I'll go over for whole school. So we kind of group these into being present, the training, and the resources that you provide. So we attend PLC meetings frequently. We hope to get to each PLC at least once a month, if not more than that. Typically it's 2 to 3 times. Hopefully it's every week. We review and we provide feedback on agendas and answer any questions that they may have. For the training, we customize training for specific groups and we provide modeling. So for individual PLCs, the way we're doing PD this year, and we did it last year and part of the year before, we embed our instructional coach into PLCs, and each PLC team determines their PD needs. We give them, we offer 3 to 5 tracks. So because we can't offer the world, but we do 3 to 5 tracks. And then each PLT determines which track that they want to run on, and the instructional coach goes into that PLC and uses that time to model whatever process that they're asking PD for. And then for resources, of course, we have the instructional coach and we send them out to state and national PD as much as possible.
So with the PD that we did within the PLTs last year, like Tiara said, we had the 4 tracks. One was assessment, one was differentiation. So the PLT itself actually got to determine, we really don't know how to differentiate and meet all of our kids' needs. We need some help with that. And then based on their content area and where they were in the PLT process and that sort of thing, the instructional coach was able to customize the PD to meet their needs instead of us having monthly whole group kind of sit and get PD sessions. It worked really, really well.
Regarding whole school action steps for administrators, again, we need to actively engage in the leadership team meetings. Our head principal is the leader of the leadership team meeting. He's the facilitator. And of course, at the end of the day, he has the power to make decisions, but he takes all of the comments and the input from the leadership team, and he never makes a decision regarding the PLC process in our school without getting feedback from them first. We prioritize the PLC time in our daily schedule. We communicate with students, families, and communities, and that's been really important and something that we've worked on in the past few years. If we don't have student and parent understanding of flex time, they question why they have this 40 minutes in the middle of the day that they're having to do something other than being in their normal classroom. For training, we provide training for the leadership team, the whole school, and that really important piece is training those facilitators. We have a professional library in one of our professional learning rooms where teachers can come in and check out different books, content area specific books, but also a lot of them are mostly about facilitating teams, being a member of a team, working within the PLC process, do for solution tree. We do book studies and not super heavy duty, you better have read chapter 3 because I'm going to give you a quiz book study. But hey, let's talk about some of the things. What did you highlight? Where did you feel that you have questions for? We have that Canvas resource hub that we talked about. And then we do a lot of school visits. If we see that a group of teachers from another school district is doing really well, say on Math 1, we'll send our Math 1 teachers to that school and see what can we glean from them and pull from what they do that's positive. And then we also have people come and visit us, and we help them support with PLT, or we have them come in and share with us what they're doing. So all kinds of different, reciprocal between districts and schools.
And in terms of that communication with parents and with the community, through this whole process, I mean, we all have to do discipline. It just is what it is. But one thing that we have tried to do is, like, when a student comes in, like if they were vaping in the bathroom, I still have to pull them up in Power School and I check their grades. And if they are not where they're supposed to be, we sit down and we work out a flex schedule. And then when I call their parent, I say, I'm calling because they were vaping in the bathroom. But I also noticed that maybe they're not doing real well in their Math 1 class. So we have worked out a mandatory flex schedule. I email it to the teachers, the student, and to the parents and say, okay, for the next 4 weeks, 4 days a week, you are with your Math 1 teacher unless you get assigned by another teacher. There is no more of the open area independent study sessions. You will be with a teacher. And parents are extremely appreciative of that. Sometimes the kids roll their eyes and it's whatever. But parents really, really love that. And they see that we are trying to use flex time to help their kids. And I'm telling y'all, at this point in this journey, it would be the end of us if we did anything to eliminate flex time.
All right, so this is our schedule again. What we wanted to point out is that our master schedule, we do work our master schedule to support the PLC process and to make sure that teams are consistent as much as possible. It's really difficult for a PLC team to switch mid-year because we're on a 4x4 block schedule. So we do try to make sure that that's clear and consistent as much as possible. If a teacher teaches 2 sections of world history first semester and then 1 section of American history, they're in the world history PLT because that's the majority, but they still have access to all the world history agendas. We still ask that main world history team sends them their agendas so that they're on the same page, because maybe next semester they're going to be part of the world history PLC. So there's lots of moving parts to think about regarding the master schedule. All right. Did we make it?
Yes.
I think okay.
Whew, mercy. Okay, so really quickly before we open the floor and let y'all ask questions, there is a sheet in the document, in the presentation, that has the resources that we would highly, highly recommend that you look into if you're working through a PLC process in your school. I would definitely tell you to get the Learning by Doing book, the Tim Kainold book that's on here. It's the 3rd resource down. That is one that helps you as a leader, an administrator, whatever it is, in a PLC school. So that one's not really for teachers or for facilitators. It's more for the leaders within the school. But these are the resources that we utilize. I mean, they're laying on my desk right now. I can pick them up and show them to you. So these are the things that we would highly recommend that you look into when you're implementing a PLC process in your school. If you like this and you want to learn about some other things that we're doing, we've got 2 more sessions this afternoon at 2:00, I think. We're doing a creative tools for digital assessment. And then at 3:30, we're doing some digital resources for administrators. So if you like this and you want to come join us again, come on. We'd love to have you.
Aaron, NCBOLD is aware they're having a few issues with the QR code for attendance, and I think also with this feedback form. We're in contact with them. They've sent out some emails about it. Keep monitoring that Performance Matters app and see if they send out a fix on there.
There's the QR code you can try. Hopefully it'll work, but we'll see. And then any resources, really and truly, we honestly do mean it. If y'all have any trouble, if you look through the presentation and you have a question about anything, if there's anything that we can do to help you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We've been doing this for a while. We're still not where we need to be, but that's part of the whole PLC process. It kind of never ends. So we're always learning, we're always changing things, and there may be something that you come across that you want to share with us, and we would love to have it. I think that's it. Do y'all have any questions? Is there anything that you want us to go back over? We've got about 2 minutes. If not, thank y'all for coming. Make sure you get credit. Make sure you send us some feedback, because we always want to know the glows and the grows. Where can we do better? What do we do well?